We are dual broadcasting right now. Not only are we dual broadcasting to the Google Hangout and to a standard video feed, but we're sending the standard video feed to multiple locations: Twitch, YouTube, Twitter, and many other locations. Okay, that wasn't very attractive. Also, now the Google Hangout is only going out to Google or to YouTube, obviously. However, if you are viewing this broadcast in the standard broadcast, how am I going to explain this? This is very confusing. If you're not watching the Google Hangout, but the standard broadcast, then you will see what's going on in the Google Hangout, but you just won't be able to participate. If you want to participate in the Google Hangout, provided that's not where you're currently watching this, or you're not watching a rerun of this later, then you will need the link. And that I am going to give to you. Let me give you the link. No, that is just going to give us. Okay, I went through this just a little bit ago. Okay, yes. All right, now it's a very long link. I'm going to create a little shortcut for us real quick. Da, 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 da. All right, that'll be good enough. All right, and now I am going to put it in the text. Okay, so at some point here, you will see it scroll by on the bottom bar here, and it will say where you can join the Google Hangout. Now, you may have to pause the video to find the Hangout, and of course, you're going to have to do that while we're live right now. But actually, the screen up in my left, provided you're not looking at the Hangout right now, yet again, I don't want to get this too confusing, but if you're watching the normal broadcast, up over my right shoulder, you will see this window, and where it says, okay, I'm going to do this, where it says you, well, your name, you will appear right beside it, and you will be able to talk to us. If you've done a Google Hangout before, you understand. So let's watch here and make sure well, now that could take forever, couldn't it? Okay, so let's get on with our first story. Just keep watching the bar and you will see the Hangout. And remember, you can contact us at any other location. So what is up with this Trump situation? Why does he hate Amazon? Or is he right to hate Amazon? I mean, Jeff Bezos is the richest. Bezos is the richest person in the world right now. So maybe he has good reason, huh? In fact, let me go ahead and put this in another window so you can see the article. Okay, what we will do is, unless if somebody joins me, I'll make this window a lot bigger. For now, I am going to put the story in this window. And actually, let's not do that. Let us instead do do it like this. Yep, that'll be better. Well, not necessarily covering me up, but that's fine too. Okay, so it says Trump reportedly wants to punish Amazon by trying to double postal service rates. The president is pushing the Postmaster General to double shipping rates. President Donald Trump has personally asked the Postmaster General, Megan Brennan, to double the rate the U.S. Postal Service charges companies like Amazon to use its services, according to a report from the Washington Post today. The move is just the latest and perhaps the most dramatic turn in the ongoing feud between the sitting president and Amazon CEO Jeff Bezos, the richest man in the world and owner of the Washington Post. Trump has often criticized the newspaper for its coverage of his administration. Brennan has managed to keep Trump at bay, fearful the request could massively complicate existing contracts between the USPS and companies like Amazon, many of which are reportedly reviewed by a regulatory commission, the Post reports. Yet last month, Trump ordered a postal service review via executive order so that a task force can evaluate the finances of the organization, presumably to help back up his claim that it loses billions a year due to poor deals struck with Amazon and others. Trump has also criticized Amazon in the past for not paying an adequate amount of taxes and for using the Post as an ideological arm of Bezos to criticize Republicans in the White House, a charge Trump has been making for years prior to his winning the 2016 U.S. election. Bezos, in response, has offered to shoot Trump into space using a Blue Origin rocket, though he made the joke back in 2015 when it would likely garner a less polarized response. Blue Origin is, among Jeff Bezos's mini project, is his space company trying to compete with SpaceX, with Elon Musk's SpaceX, apparently. Though he seems to still be in much earlier phases at this point. Brennan, who has spent 32 years at the Postal Service and became Postmaster General in 2014, has met with Trump multiple times in the past 18 months to discuss the Amazon matter, according to the Post. Reportedly, the debate over how much Amazon should be paying the Postal Service has divided top administration officials, with Trump calling on and receiving conflicting opinions from members of his cabinet and staff like Treasury Secretary Steve Mnuchin and former National Economic Council Director Gary Cohn, who left the White House in March over a major rift with Trump on proposed steel and aluminum tariffs. Amazon's relationship to the Postal Service is a complicated one. The Post reports that Amazon, like many other retailers, uses the USPS for so-called last-mile deliveries, meaning Amazon brings the package to the post office closest to a customer home so a mail worker can then bring it to the door. Amazon reportedly uses the USPS for 40% of its last mile deliveries, according to some analysts, and paid $21.7 billion in 2017 in shipping costs. Wow. That shows you what a powerhouse Amazon has become, as most everybody knows. I mean, just from a little Amazon startup, from a little startup about the time I started Computer Magazine, and now it's a what is its worth? I'll have to look that up. It's got to be 500 billion, approaching a trillion, like Apple. Who knows? Probably 700 billion. I'd have to see the market cap, but just quite amazing. Now, Computer Magazine, on the other hand, hasn't fared so well. I mean, it's, we're doing good. You like to read our articles and everything, but certainly not. Whoa, starting a little service selling books probably should have been what I did. The Postal Service, though, it's lost money for the last 11 years, reported a 11.8% year-over-year increase in revenue to $19.5 billion last year, some of which is likely attributable to Amazon's increased spending in the area. The nature of Amazon and the Postal Service's deal remains secret. Oh, that's interesting. This is from The Verge, and there's another story on The Verge I want to talk about. Not that I'm picking on The Verge today. Now, let's make sure nobody's joined our Hangout. Doesn't look like it. But remember, the Hangout is scrolling below. If you would like to join the Hangout, here it comes right now. In fact, join our live Google Hangout now at Hey Everyone. Well, I mistyped that, didn't I? Thanks for... What did I type? Maybe you didn't get the Hangout. I think there was a character limit on that, and when I pasted the link, I just clicked apply and I didn't check it. What? Yeah, that's pretty much what happened. It looks, actually, it's there. It's just not showing because the font's too big. Let's make it smaller. And then let me drag that down, make it a little bigger so you can actually see it. Get over there. Okay, there you go. Okay, right there. All right. Well, let's just make sure. I don't want to keep you waiting, boring you here, but let's just not make this mistake again. Let's make sure it's going to scroll past. But I will. How can I do this? I better wait. Yeah, Streamlabs is. I love the guys at Streamlabs. They contacted me, and they're very nice fellows, very responsive. But their service is really cross-wired and screwy. Not that they charge anything for it. Yeah, here we go. Bit.ly. Hopefully you can read. You'll have to pause the video and read that link. And then I've got this, maybe I ought to change the font because it's probably just difficult to read as well. Let's put it in a normal font. We could do Comic Sans. Sure, Comic Sans. Bold. There we go. Now it should be a little easier to read. Okay, so anyway, let's go back to the other story I wanted to look at here, the decline of Snapchat. Now, this is interesting because of the whole, isn't it Spiegel who owns it and refused to sell it to Facebook a few years ago for $4 billion or some such, so they turned around and bought. Hey, remind me out there, they bought. I know who they bought. I just. See, I can't. Sometimes I can't. Facebook bought messenger service. What was it? What was it? Oh, my poor brain. It's been a long day. Well, we know they bought Instagram, but of course that's not what we're talking about here. Yeah, here's a whole list of things they've bought. Boy, they have bought a lot of services. But really, most of these you wouldn't have probably heard of. WhatsApp, of course, WhatsApp. Yeah, so their biggest purchases are probably Instagram, WhatsApp, Oculus. What else? I see those three on there. so many of these have got to be infrastructure things and technologies that are under the hood, because there are 67 listed here. Yeah, I'm not showing that screen right now because it's kind of incidental, but anyway, WhatsApp, they turned around and bought WhatsApp, I believe, for something like 13 billion when Snapchat refused to sell for something like 4 billion. Now, Evan Spiegel, isn't that his name? I'm sure the article is going to tell us. I'm sure he's set for life either way, from selling off some stock when it went way up in price. But even if it were to collapse, now, not that I know that's going to happen, but let's see what this article says. The decline of Snapchat and the secret joy of internet ghost towns. As fewer and fewer of my friends use the platform, Snapchat has become a haven from the grinding utility of the internet. It's difficult to believe now, but there was a time when the internet was nowhere instead of everywhere. Before the social internet had mapped so completely onto our social lives that attempting to separate the two or call life away from the internet real became a ridiculous endeavor. Online was where we went to escape, to be unseen, to be nowhere. When I started a live journal in 2002, a few of my friends also had them, and more would eventually join. But the point of the thing, the real heart meat of it, was the strangers there. When LiveJournal was the primary way I existed on the internet, what occupied my time was not my friends' accounts of their days or their vague, passive-aggressive posts about the drama of which I was already aware. Rather, it was falling into a rabbit hole of total strangers' personal confessions and vague dramas, just as small and unimportant as those unfolding within my own friend group. But these were infinitely more interesting because they were happening to someone I had never met, who didn't know I existed. When I made my own humiliatingly verbose and confessional posts, I never imagined the audience to be the few real-life friends who also used the website. I was often embarrassed or even annoyed when these friends referenced those posts in offline conversations. What I loved about LiveJournal in my early online days was that it felt like a public space in which I got to talk to no one, a place where I could yell into the void. Putting any part of oneself online is always a cry for attention to some degree, but sometimes, against all logic, the desire is just as much for the opposite. I want to confess things out loud and be ignored. I want to say the things I can only say if I believed that I am nowhere. The greatest joy of LiveJournal and other similar proto-social networks and chat rooms was their uselessness. There was no reason for any of us to be there, not really. Online sociality may have addressed loneliness, but in its early form, it did as much to simultaneously heighten it, isolating those of us who sought out artificial social lives in two-dimensional typefaces. That uselessness was precisely the thing that the internet offered. This was a place you visited to get nothing done, a place where nothing counted or lasted with benefits or consequences. Perhaps more than anything else, what has sucked all the joy out of the social internet in its current form is its exhortation to be useful. We have arrived at a version where everything seems to be just another version of LinkedIn. Every online space is supposed to get you a job or a partner or a stronger personal brand so you can accomplish the big public record goals of life. The public marketplace is everywhere. It's an interactive and immersive CV, an archive. It all counts and it all matters. First in the era of America Online, and then in the era of LiveJournal and microblogging, the internet was at least partly an escape. It was a place where the boundaries of real life, in which everything was more or less a job interview, could be sloughed off, as one could imagine the internet as a quiet, uninhibited space of whispered intimacies. In this era of hyper-usefulness, what seems rarest and most valuable online are spaces that offer, however illusory, a return to the original uselessness. There are places where, against the constant obligation to be seen and remembered, we might get to be unseen, unrecorded, and forgotten. Boy, he's written a long article here, he or she. I'll mention the author at the end. I had not read this yet, but I wanted to read it as part of this show, live in real time, and we can share it together. It's not exactly easy to see how many people you follow or how many people follow you on Snapchat, but my guess is that I currently have maybe 150 followers. I follow about 100. But for the last few months, when I open the app, I see posts from between 2 to 5 of those people. If I post a story, which I do with lesser and lesser frequency these days, 7 people view it at most. These numbers have dwindled steadily, and now my Snapchat has started to feel like an abandoned lot where a building once stood. The app has never really been my thing. I've used it on and off for several years, but only in its recent ongoing deterioration have I suddenly found it to be a compelling place online. As Snapchat alienates its users and fades further into irrelevance, it has begun to feel, as many failing social platforms do near the end, like a place to access the uselessness and unimportance, the sense of yelling into the void that the internet once offered before what we did here mattered. When Snapchat first appeared, the buzz surrounding it was based on one feature. The photos you sent in this app disappeared. Now, this is why I've never really used Snapchat. Yes, I've used it a little, but I hadn't really ever added anybody on there except a couple of people, and I just saw it as kind of pointless. But the real thing, and I'll continue with the story here, but the real thing about Snapchat is that I spend most of my time still on a computer. Now, I know I'm an old guy and an old fogey. Most people are on phones, and most people don't even own computers. In fact, most people who were computer people back in my day, when nobody else, you either had a computer and everybody considered you a geek, or you had nothing 20 years ago. They just skipped straight past computers into smartphones and don't own a computer and maybe never did. And the vast majority now of computing of computers, and we are a computer magazine, and a smartphone is a computer. It's just a smaller platform, a smaller form with an integrated screen and mobile networking through a cellular network. But otherwise, it is a computer in all senses of the word, running its own operating system. And most people, that is their primary platform nowadays. Whereas for me, still the computer is. The phone is still secondary. I use it as a phone and I use it when I'm out. But otherwise, I prefer, if I can, to be at a computer with my multiple screens, big screens, quick input, quick typing, much faster, much more abilities, multiple windows, which you can do in a very limited form on a phone. Anyway, my point is Snapchat, as far as I know still now, granted, I hadn't looked into it a while, but back then, as far as I knew, they had no way you could do it on a computer. Now, there may be an app, like a Windows 10 app or something. I should have checked into that now that it's occurring to me. I just hadn't checked in for a while into this issue, but it was isolated to the phone. That's it. Now, that works for most people, of course. So in a way, it was a great strategy. But for me, and maybe many other people, that's one reason it's not used. Now, to me, even if you're going to do an app, you should have a web interface as well for desktop people. If you're not going to release that app in a way that it can run on Windows or run on Linux or run on the Mac, that they can still use it in a web interface or computer. You're missing out on that whole market just by isolating it to Android or iOS. Okay, so that's my thoughts on it. But anyway, and that's why for me it wasn't ever a thing. Let me continue. Well, let me check first to make sure that we do not have anybody who's joined us. And of course, we do not. But feel free to join us, and of course, people hopefully will look back to this second broadcast and think, why didn't I know about it then? And join it, in a few months from now, when we have hundreds of thousands of people watching us every night. Well, we can hope. Okay, so let's get back. When Snapchat first appeared, the buzz... Okay, I already read that. It was that the photos disappeared. In 2011, every other form of social media was permanent and archivable. But before stories or memories, whatever you sent someone on Snapchat vanished a few seconds after the recipient viewed it, like it had never existed. In 2016, Instagram launched its own version of stories, which the CEO freely admitted was an exact copy of Snapchat's story features. The ephemerality that had made Snapchat unique had become popular enough to be cannibalized by other platforms in the hopes of replicating Snapchat's success. Yeah, I remember Snapchat, Evan, whatever, young guy worth billions, was not happy that they had done that. They felt ripped off. But you know what? Ideas themselves are not trademarkable or copyrightable, or and a good idea will always spread. So you have to almost plan on that. Plan your strategy that then people are going to pick up on this idea, so you have a certain amount of lead time, and that's it. It worked. Today, ephemerality is a standard feature of social media, one we no longer think of as magic, yet everything still has consequences. We're all well aware that nothing really disappears, that everything can be saved, archived, screenshotted, and well, we know that's happened many, many times with Snapchat, hasn't it? I heard many stories of people sending something they thought, oh, it's easy to do a screen capture of things on a phone or any other platform. We're well aware that nothing really disappears, that everything can be saved, archived, screenshotted. On the internet, where privacy has all but vanished and everything disappears, it turns out that the more rare and valuable treasure might not be the promise of ephemerality, but the useless spaces. Don't ever do anything, say anything, type anything, send a message, post anything on the internet ever, or in fact anywhere around anybody might have a camera or a recorder or anything, because trust me, if it can be, it will be, and it will never go away. The closest thing that we might find to something on the internet that is actually secret is not posts that disappear, but rather a website at the end of its relevance, one that nobody cares about, where nobody is watching. Oh, well, isn't that true? As recently as summer 2016, Snapchat was having some sort of renaissance. New users were adults almost as often as they were teens. See, this shows I'm an old guy, because I still consider Snapchat something brand new. And what, it came out 5 years ago? If it came out in 2011, and they make reference, I don't remember if that's when it was released, but then or even prior, well, then that would be 7 years ago, because we're in 2018. See, the older you get, you speed up towards the cliff. Time doesn't slow down, but the older you get, because the percentage of whatever amount of time is less and less of your life. I mean, to me, 7 years ago seems like, when I was 20, would have seemed like, what a year seemed like. I don't know. But I mean, it's just, you almost start to forget how long things have actually been. 7 years ago. Well, yeah, to me, it's still something I'm like, yeah, I need to work more with Snapchat, that new app. Whew. Yeah. Even the New York Times praised it as the place where you go to be yourself. I use Snapchat to document a trip to Savannah and Chattanooga to see my partner's family, a slow, sweaty summer in New York, and a few visits to Philadelphia where my parents live. I also documented my face bedecked with flower crowns and cat ears, with filters that shaved my jawline. I think he meant with filters that shaved down my jawline and shortened my chin. It made my skin as smooth and light as glass. People I knew flocked to Snapchat that summer, and it soon became much like any other social media platform, albeit with flattering filters. Photos, videos, and text still disappeared, but archival functions now existed, making it possible to save anything one wanted to save, both of one's own posts and other users. People referenced each other's snaps in posts on Twitter and encouraged followers from other spaces to come over to this one. Snapchat was no more private than the rest of the internet, and like much of the internet, something originally intended for kids was overrun with 20 and 30 something media and tech professionals competing to see how well they could master it. I lapsed out of using it later that year, partly because too many people had amassed there for it to feel meaningfully different from Twitter, and partly because a few people I really cared about, close friends, my partner, had gravitated back towards other apps. I revisited it about a year later when a few other people started using Snapchat frequently again. Even in that relatively short amount of time, the space had already become noticeably less populous. The buzz of activity around it was gone. I tell you, even Twitter, which I've been on since the beginning, I rarely use, unlike most people who in my profession, it seems, really gravitate towards Twitter. If I'm on social media, it's primarily Facebook. Uh, anyway, and this is how old I am and how long I've been in technology. I still consider all of this kind of new social media. I mean, relatively. I mean, not new, but it's all kind of a product of the past 10, 15 years. I mean, I started Computer Magazine 21 years ago, and I've been doing internet stuff since 93, 94, or very early in the internet, 92, 93, doing web development since way back then. So it's definitely changed. It's definitely advanced. I love how it's advanced. I could see back then, as anybody in the tech world could see, that where it was going to go and how it was going to transform society. And so many people I remember back then when I had started Computer Magazine. I own Computer Magazine back then. It's like their eyes would glow. They had no understanding of it meaning anything important or the internet. They didn't even own a computer, most people. So, but you look 20, 30 years ahead, boy, we're 25 years forward, and look how much the world has transformed. And now think another 25, just like the story we discussed yesterday with the Google Duplex assistant. I mean, you just think 25 years ahead for where that is going, let alone social media, you can't possibly, I mean, you can almost imagine in broad strokes, but you can't possibly imagine if Facebook would even exist 10 years from now or 20 years from now, let alone Snapchat. Snapchat, according to this article, kind of seems like it's on its way out. So let's continue. Snapchat had a bad year. Its profits and stock prices were down, and stories about the company's questionable spending were being published after its holiday celebration. Instagram stories feature had more than double the number of daily users. Kylie Jenner, Chrissy Teigen, and more significantly, Rihanna had all abandoned the platform in recent months, along with numerous other celebrities. The famous and non-famous alike had been driven away by a redesign so terrible that it generated a change.org petition to restore the old version, which garnered more than 1 million signatures. Snapchat already seemed both desperate and irrelevant. No one was arguing that you should make an account anymore or that there was any particular reason to be on it at all. Now, let me check our feed just to make sure we're still doing good. We look good. Nobody looks like they've messaged or anything because, of course, none of you is aware of it. Spread the word, though. If you see this video, please spread the word about TalkTech, about Facebook.com/TalkTech Show, the Twitter, the YouTube channel, TalkTech.computermagazine.com, and, of course, visit Computer Magazine and our YouTube.com/Computer Magazine for those videos. But this is our live. TalkTech is our live, off-the-cuff show, and hopefully one where we're actually talking to you, interacting with you via all the methods I've described as people become more aware of the show, and that hopefully will become the primary focus of the show, is talking about your tech issues. Until then, we'll talk about general tech stories and other technology stuff that's going on. So let me just make sure we are still doing good. We're still on our Hangout. That's looking good. And we are still streaming to Twitch, Periscope, Smashcast, YouTube, YouNow, Stream.me, and Mixer. All right now, you can view us anywhere, any of those places. And of course, visit our Facebook page, or you can join the Facebook group. You can follow us on Twitter, on and on and on and on. You'll find the links in the bottom of this video on YouTube. That is the best place to view this. Wherever you're viewing it, go to our YouTube channel, talktech.computermagazine.com, and switch over to there, because you'll find both the Google Hangout and this video feed, and the video quality is better, and you can type a message that will pop up on screen and so forth. Okay, why don't we continue the story? There were fewer and fewer people I knew active as the months went on, but that didn't make a difference because the way I was using it had changed. Everyone I followed and their stories had receded. I rarely checked anything other than my chats, and soon the app's whole function was for me. I think he screwed up here somewhere else. I'm just really not understanding how he's writing it. Was for me to talk to one particular group of friends. The more the outside world departed the platform, the more it made the group chat inside of it feel like a secret clubhouse. It felt as though we were having a private conversation in another room in the house, far away from where the party was happening. I continued to use it to talk to 8 people I wanted to talk to, which became 6, and then 5, and then 4, and then 3, as members of the group gave up on the redesign and the app's many other failures. But I still didn't leave, because the end times experience of Snapchat is the most I've ever enjoyed it. I posted about the things I would never post about on other platforms: writing, the gym, money, endless photos of my face. All of these things I know make bad social media content. They're the kinds of posts that generate little engagement, annoy the people reading them, and embarrass the person who made them. They were things I felt private about, parts of my life that were at once legitimately vulnerable and very boring. They were exactly the kind of things I might have posted about on LiveJournal as a teenager, up late opening her heart to the void. So it's a female author. I'll credit the author here at the end because I'm reading her whole article. For a brief moment, as everybody abandons the sinking ship, Snapchat generally feels like a place where no one might be listening in, like it might really be the void, rather than the sum of everyone else's phones. Well, it was intended to be a void, right? That's kind of how it started off. In fact, it started off kind of, in my opinion, they built it as a one-trick pony so that you could send probably lewd photos to people and they disappear and not be kept a record of, for teenagers who wanted to send pics of their junk to their girlfriend or to some chick that they were interested in. I mean, really, wasn't that the intent? They probably never realized it would become that big. Maybe they did. Maybe they were that bright as youngsters that they were in tune with what was going on at the time, because they were very young, still are very young. One of my friends who is still resolutely on Snapchat has told me that it gives her a space to be visible just to some people, to not have to share everything with everyone in order to share anything with anyone. That to me is too high a cost, and it's a cost so many other platforms require you to pay. Another, who finally abandoned the app in recent months, mentioned how she loved the smallness of it. I had maybe 100 people viewing my snap, so the responses stayed so much less creepy than the other places. There's no way to scroll through a timeline or look at a grid to see if someone is good or bad. That means you end up following mostly people you know, which is so nice because then it's just a little chat. Since the outcry against the redesign, Snapchat has rolled out yet another version of the app, responding in part to the significantly slow growth that resulted from its new version. The new design is supposed to go back to basics and return to things people loved about the old version and missed in the new one. The previous redesign, built in only 6 weeks, separated people you knew from celebrities and brands. On the surface, this was meant to bring the focus back to interpersonal friendships, but instead it had an alienating effect. As a not famous person, it seemed to say that Snapchat wasn't for us. This isn't why people are leaving the platform. They're leaving because it became difficult to use, disrupting the expectations and patterns the users have built up over time, making the experience a flailing one where it was impossible to find what you actually wanted to see. The redesign may still save Snapchat and bring it back to robust growth and relevance. Perhaps this won't be the death of the app so much as a passing era of growing pains. My experience is limited to a very small group of users, even at the most populous experience of the app. But for the moment, it still feels like a dead space on the internet, a place people have increasingly forgotten. In that, it offers something far more precious than the ephemerality it intended to give us. The internet is full of consequences now because real life is full of consequences. The membrane between online and real life has long since dissolved. As Snapchat fades into irrelevance, it has less and less to do with our real lives. The ones that count and matter, the ones where we have to be accountable for each action and each sentence. These almost gone spaces can feel like a party about how you're leaving town in the morning, replete with a last night on earth sort of permissiveness. Peach, which never truly caught on, I've never heard of it, has for most of its life only existed as a barely alive platform, functions as the same kind of private clubhouse for people who use it. A small party where no one is listening. Vine, which, yes, I did use Vine and had accounts on Vine. Vine was always great, but it was perhaps at its best in the last weeks before its rumored shutdown, when everyone on it seemed to throw rules and caution to the wind, when every Vine felt like it might be the very last. I also saw Vine as a one-trick pony. I mean, you could do these, 30-second videos? I forget what the limitation was, 15 seconds, something like that. They were trying to be the video Snapchat, essentially. Not really. The video Twitter is what they were really trying to be. They were trying to be the video Twitter, which actually in concept makes sense. Everything is with the increase in technology, the power in mobile devices, the power in computing, and the increase in bandwidth in the internet as it has evolved over the last 10 and 15 years and continued to evolve every few years. It made sense to turn everything from text only to video, multimedia, interactive, etc. So, which is exactly why with Computer Magazine, which has always been a text publication, website, we have really tried to shift towards doing videos, reading the news, interacting with people, answering questions, and so forth, and turning into a radio / web show / interactive format ourselves, because it's just the way things are going, and while also having the text and all on the site. But so in a way, Vine really had, in a way, a right idea, like, hey, let's do what Twitter's doing, but do it in video. But it didn't work. One reason with that is the reason other video sites have failed is because hosting video and the bandwidth required is very, very expensive. Supposedly YouTube still loses money, or did up until they started taking super chats. So let's continue. I forget exactly where I left off, but I'll just pick up. Vine was always great, but it was perhaps at its best in the last weeks of the rumor shutdown, blah, 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 blah. Everybody threw caution to the wind. Okay. Tumblr is a little like this too. It now feels like an abandoned space that was once a robust destination. It now feels like a secret. Yeah. Tumblr to me was kind of just almost maybe a MySpace, or, I mean, I have Tumblr accounts as well, but I rarely get on there. I mean, it was just another static MySpace, not even a MySpace, but almost a GeoCities, a way to host your own website, essentially, without it being its own website. It seemed to me, I mean, I never even really explored it all that much. There may have been more interactive features on it. When websites become useless, they become a reminder of what was lost when the internet gained purpose, function, and profit. We are also searching for an online space where we can yell our secrets and be unseen and disappear. These opportunities now often exist only in dying online spaces, the last place where no one is looking. Well, it's a lesson for everybody. I don't know if Snapchat's going to die. It probably will, but because all sites and services are going to die eventually, that doesn't mean the people behind them or the companies behind them are necessarily going to die if they can follow the flow correctly, as Microsoft has done somewhat, but I mean, they're definitely not the central figure they used to be. They still own the primary operating system, at least in computers, but geez, look how Apple and Android, Google really has been magical, because it was, Apple existed long before, and it almost failed there, in the late 90s. I mean, everybody, including me working in IT at the time, just thought Apple was, done for. It was a non-existent thing. And then Steve Jobs turned it around, and thus we have mobile, because who was really going to do it right? It was obvious it was being done wrong way back then, but he did it right and transformed the industry. And Google, I mean, Google is just, look how Google took over. I mean, Microsoft owned everything, kind of. They could have owned everything at one time there in the mid 90s. But I just remember so many dirty tricks and so many shitty products, Internet Explorer, everything else, that allowed other people to wedge their way in and build that wedge and break it open. And you got Google and Apple that are two powerhouses, and Microsoft is still important, very important, and big server operating system, Windows Server operating system, on many platforms that they own and run, even Mixer that we're streaming to right now. But I don't know. Everything will eventually transform, die, get gobbled up by other companies, and Snapchat is probably one of those. You have to bend to the industry, bend with the flow, and there's a certain amount of unpredictability that, I mean, unless you just happen to be doing the right thing at the right time and get lucky and a million other factors, you're not going to succeed and you're not going to stay alive. None of these companies 100 years from now will exist, almost certainly. Maybe some of them. I mean, Coca-Cola exists from 100 years ago, and Ford, or, you know, and so many other companies. But still, how many companies exist for 200 years, for instance? I mean, even 200 years ago, what did it even really mean to be a company or a corporation? It wasn't. Maybe in England, there's a few. Lloyd's of London may have existed 200 years ago, but there's not many companies. And 200 years from now, you just can't. We can't imagine. We just simply cannot imagine what will be going on, can we? Well, those are the two stories we're going to go over tonight. Nobody joined us yet again, but feel free to join. Feel free to message, call the phone number, leave a message, even when we're off the air. If email. Editor at computermagazine.com or TalkTech at computermagazine.com, and I will mention it on the next show. Whatever you say in a voicemail or leave in an email, or if you leave a message on a video, if you just comment on a video, I'll bring it up next time if it's not lewd, crude, and it's somewhat relevant. So anyway, that was as much as we can really go over today. To remind myself of the date, I tell you, May 18th, Friday, for Talk